station, WDWL TV, located on Grumpy Vulture Boulevard. We bring you me, the grumpy old man. Hello, friends, and happy Memorial Day. I hope the weather was nice enough for you to have your cookout and do all your family stuff. Grumpy don't do all that stuff anymore. To me, too much of a bother. Not Memorial Day. I don't mean that. I mean all these like Memorial Day, 4th of July. Don't need all that. Okay. As it says in the title, how to be an independent photojournalist. All right. Yesterday, I showed you the big cam. Okay? And I told you I have a favorite DSLR that I carry. Because the nice thing about these cameras today is they're not only still shots, you can do video. And what's nice is, believe it or not, this little tiny microphone is very sensitive. So I can be standing quite a distance and I get excellent sound, light. The new cameras, I'll tell you what, this weighs half of what the old SLR cameras used to weigh. It's amazing. Well, they're no longer, the spun aluminum bodies. Most of them are, there's a lot of composite in this. But I mean, this ain't a cheap camera. A Fuji Fine Pix. And it does take fine pics. I know, quit being fucking corny. Leave the jokes for a comedian. Remember? First of all, wait, before we get into that, if you want to be a real freelancer, you need the equipment. You already saw the camera. I also have a backup. Same thing. You always have to carry multiple backups. I have just about every different size camera light. This is the neat one because this is not only white, it does RGB, red, green, blue, pink. Yeah, I can put color tones in with this one. And, like I say, you have to have all sorts of backup. Because if something fails, this is more like for spot, for doing a face. If something fails, it's not like you can say, I'll come back tomorrow when I got my, stuff fixed. No. You got to change stuff on the fly. Same thing. Backup microphones. Whole bag full of them. Microphone for every stinking need. And now, there's a lot of money involved. And in the heyday, I made enough to cover the equipment and put a little in my pocket. Not today. It's not that easy anymore. You know, back in the day, when before Grumpy was, you know, a Tyrannosaurus Rex here, there weren't that many freelancers because it wasn't cheap to get into the business. I lucked out because a good friend of mine was a cameraman for one of the local TV stations. And when he semi-retired, he sold me one of them Godzillas, you know, them 60-pounders, for a very reasonable price. And he also lined me up with the contacts to freelance. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. Well, it might have happened, but see, I never went to journalism school or photojournalism school. I learned it from him. I used to do ride-alongs with him all the time. You want to talk about somebody that had an impressive bank of police scanners in his car. Holy shit. He must have had 10. It was an ex-police car, so they had bucket seats, and they had left the professional console in the center where all the equipment gets mounted. And like I say, I think he had 10 police scanners. Had Grumpy not met him and become friends with him, I'd have never had the contacts to do what I did. But I'm just saying, it wasn't cheap back in the day, and it isn't cheap now. It's even more expensive if you're going to freelance. And let me tell you, you can't freelance with a GoPro on a stick. No. So get it through your head, all of you independent journalists that are going to go out and audit the post office. If you walk in with a GoPro on a stick, they're going to laugh your ass right out the door. I laugh my ass off when I see these idiots. Now, as I was telling you, I'm gonna show you the big boy here. There we go. There's a studio light for you. Barn doors and all. And what you do is you put a bonnet. You see these on TV all the time. They put a bonnet and it softens the light. But there it is. And this goes up about 10 feet. So I can aim it, you know. And it's got daylight and soft light. And this is the one that takes them big monster batteries. Because these LEDs, even though they're LEDs, they eat up the power. But there's the, yeah. This ain't cheap. This is big bucks here. And barn doors. Close the barn doors. We don't want the horse to get out. There we go. Barn doors. Oh. So yeah, Grumpy's got some equipment. Grumpy has 2 Fujis. Because you always got to have a backup. 2 Fuji Fine Bics. If you're going to be an independent journalist and you want to do the job properly, you have to have at least 2 of everything. And when it comes to the LED lights, usually 4 of everything. Because if you're using the small LED lights on the cameras, you have to have the daylight and you have to have the soft white. So you got to have 4. You got to have 2 of each. You got to have backups for everything. Cables, oh, I got cables up the ass. Oh, I forgot. Tomorrow I'll show you the boom mics. Mics, plural. You know what a boom mic is? That's a mic on a stick. That's where you can get away with having something on a stick. You have a microphone, got that big fuzzy cover on it, you know. On a stick. Yeah. I'll never forget. I was doing, it was like a PSA for some animal shelter. And you have that big fuzzy cover on the mic. You know, it's a noise blocker. I call them spit covers. So I had this boom mic with this big fuzzy cover. Oh, this is back in the day. And I'm filming a cat over there. Not paying attention. Didn't know there was a cat up there. And I've got the boom mic because this cat kind of talked. If you talk to it, it'd answer back. So I had the boom mic. And I'm trying to pick up this cat over here. And suddenly, this cat jumped down, was able to grab that cover off of my boom mic and took off with it. And the woman said, "You ain't never going to see that again." I said, "What?" She says, "That's a new cat. We can't get near it." I was like, "Oh, now you tell me." Yep. Windsock gone. And, you know, that was pre-internet. And a lot of the local camera shops didn't carry a lot of this stuff. So everything was mail order catalog. But I told you I was going to show you, especially the biggie light. Now this one is a small one. They make them like huge. Some of those lights are like 36 by 30. It's like lugging in a TV set. They don't call them TV sets anymore. I'm dating myself. Flat screen. And the ones they use out in Hollywood, holy shit. They got some the size of billboards. But that one works perfect for me. Because if I would be like doing an interview, I'm not doing the interview like they do on TV. Because on TV they have two of those lights. One aimed at the interviewee and one aimed at the interviewer. I'm trying to think of the crime program. Crime Time something. And the woman is a retired Scotland Yard detective. And she does I wouldn't say a documentary. It's like she's reinvestigating police cases. And she meets with all the former, the detectives that did the investigation. And when they're in a studio, they have two of those big lights. Now, the ones that they're using are twice the size of this one. And they've got the bonnets on them. And one is aimed at her, and one is aimed at... I will give you the formal name of the program on YouTube. It's a crime show. Wonderful. And it's not just crimes over across the pond. She also does American crime. And when she's doing the interview, the camera's back far enough, you can see how those lights work. Although if you watch 60 Minutes, 2020, 48 Hours, you see the lights. You get the idea. I've got the bonnet put away for that one, so that's why there was no bonnet on it. Everything's better with a bonnet on it. How many of you remember that commercial? Everything's better with a bonnet on it. Everybody's looking at the screen going, what the fuck is he talking about? Go back. Matter of fact, on YouTube, look it up. Commercials from the 50s. You want to have a good laugh? You can really see how primitive commercials were back in the day. Now, how many of you remember the baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet jingle? Go on YouTube and look up 1970 Holden, Holden, Holden commercial. It's the Australian version of baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Because in Australia, the GM cars were called Holden. Basically, Holden was bought by GM, and they left the name. And when you see the cars, they're like a cobbled together Pontiac Chevy. Matter of fact, the one I don't know what they call it. I'm going to call it a Chevelle. It has a Chevelle front end and a Pontiac back end. And I think the big four-door, which we called the Bonneville, they called it the Commodore. Yeah, 1950s Holden commercial on YouTube. You want to laugh your ass off how they were able to work the Australian items into the jingle. But it's the same thing. Except at the end, where you got baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and they go, and Holden cars, not Chevrolet. The commercial's a riot. Look it up. Unfortunately, GM shit-canned the factory. And so did Ford. Everything's imported now. Put a lot of Australians out of work because they had their own car factories down there. They had Ford and Holden. And GM shut down, cleared out, and then Ford followed them. It's sad. Now everything's imported. No more Holden cars. Although, I'm going to have to check. I don't know if the Chevys that they export from, I don't know if they ship them from here or Mexico, if they call them Holdens or if they're now Chevrolets. But yeah, look that commercial up. You'll love it. Like usual, I got sidetracked. But you get the idea. You can't be taken seriously telling someone that you're a photojournalist with a GoPro on a stick. You know, if somebody walked into the post office while I was there, like this, with a GoPro on a stick, I'd laugh my ass off. I'd ruin his video because I would be laughing constantly, going, "You're a journalist with a GoPro on a stick?" What I would like to do, if somebody came in like this, I'd like to have the camera out in the car and then come in with a real photojournalist rig and go, "You want to compare here, Mr. GoPro on a stick?" I got to charge that up. I'll tell you what. These are made of composite. There's nothing to it. It's got a little LED screen in the back. You can watch what you're... The guys that invented these Oh my God. Now, this is an older one. They're up to GoPro 11, I think. Now, in a way, I could see why these idiots use these. Because they take phenomenal video. Jay Leno uses them all the time. They have mounts. I told you, they got suction cup mounts, and they mount them on the cars when he goes up. But he's got a professional film crew, following him. But when they get the road shots and so on, they've got 4 or 5 of these mounted on a car. And they take professional video. And I have cases where you can turn these into underwater cameras. And you can film, I want to say 30, 40 feet underwater. Which if you're like on the Great Barrier Reef and you want to film the coral, you only got to go down, 10, 15 feet. But they, phenomenal. I've got 2. Like I say, you always got to have a pair. And these weren't cheap either. And basically, they, little micro SD card. And the battery life is unbelievable. But I filmed with them. As a matter of fact, all my first 2 years worth of videos were done with that GoPro. When I'm sitting in the backyard in a lawn chair. But take a look at them. You look at that camera and go, oh, that chintzy piece of shit ain't got... That's what I did my first 2 years with. Now, I got the goodie camera. But I'm going to do some lawn chair like I did, kind of retro, with that camera. And you'll see how phenomenal the GoPros are. As good as that one. So, in a way, I can see why they use the GoPro. But a real freelance journalist is not going to use a GoPro. Now, I have seen some freelancers using DSLRs. As a matter of fact, there's one TV station here in town where the cameraman has one of these around his neck in case the other camera goes down. He can jump right in with a DSLR. So they do use these. Not this, the ones they're using, this here is like an $800 camera. They're using like $3,000 DSLRs. Although Grumpy didn't pay $800. But I got 2. Bucks. Big bucks. Bucks. So like I told you yesterday, I was going to show you some of the equipment that I have from... I'll tell you what. It won't be tomorrow. It'll be sometime later on in the week. I'll show you the old VHS and VHS-C cameras that I used to shoot with. And the VHS-C, it's a JVC camera. The C stands for cassette. Instead of the big VHS tape, it shoots on a cassette. And you have to have an adapter that looks like a VHS tape, but you open it up and you drop the cassette in, and then you can play it in your tape player. I'll show you. I'll give you a good laugh. I still have them, and they still work. And I still have VHS players. I can take my tapes, which I still have, and play them, because I've got it hooked up to my big flat screen. I watch them now and then. I have, when Blockbuster went bust, I went in because they were selling tapes for movies for like 50 cents a piece. So I bought a bunch. Yeah. VHS is going out, Grumpy. Stock up. I did. I also have a case of blanks. Oh, well. But they all still work. And we're talking, VHS was late 80s, 90s. Still work. The main problem is the JVC, VHS-C, JVC VHS-C camera. I can't get batteries for it anymore. Luckily, I have a converter that converts from 110 to 12 or 15 volts. Go figure. They don't make a battery for a 1990 camera. Jesus. Let me take that back. They do. Across the pond in, I'm going to say Leicestershire, but it's like Leicester. It looks like Leicestershire, England. They still have them. Big bucks. The battery is like 110 pounds, which is like $125, $130, something like that. No battery. I was like, I don't need it that bad, but I'll keep you in mind. Thank God for cell phones. I would have hated to make that call on a landline. Of course, the phone numbers are goofy as could be. But yeah, I did find one. Leicestershire. Anybody watching from across the pond, tell me how the hell to pronounce that town. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I says to the guy, he says, you got them in stock? Oh, yeah. I said, you're kidding. Oh, no. Every now and then. And he says to me, someone from across the pond like you gives me a call. I said, what about over there. Well, he says, I sell them here too. But I do sell them across the pond. Everything's across the pond. They don't say, oh, over in America. Like we say, oh, over in England. That's what he said to me. Yeah, every now and then, someone from across the pond gives me a call, rings me up. Yeah, I like that. Someone across the pond will ring me up. Well, I'm ringing you up. How much? Don't. Yeah, when he said 100 pounds, I was like, the battery weighs 100 pounds? Little grumpy humor. He didn't appreciate it. He goes, no, it only weighs like 8 ounces. I was making a joke. And he says to me, he says, you Americans have a strange sense of humor. You ever hear English humor? You talk about dry. Although, on YouTube, look it up. The two Ronnies, Ronnies, the two Ronnies. Those two guys are hilarious. Look them up on YouTube, the two Ronnies. Look up the one skit, My BlackBerry is Frozen. Oh my God, you want to laugh? Oh my. Now that humor is hilarious. Almost as good as Benny Hill. The two Ronnies, My BlackBerry is Frozen. You'll piss yourself. These two guys, oh, amazing. Hilarious. Oh, we really got up the subject today, didn't we? And I haven't seen any warnings. Now, I lucked out. I watched yesterday, no freezing. So I'm hoping, where am I? I think if I keep it around 30 minutes, I'm like at 37, it won't. I think the longer Prism runs, it kind of slows the computer down. So, I'm going to say again, Happy Memorial Day. I hope all of your picnic and barbecue plans went well. My neighbor was barbecuing right outside the studio. And we haven't turned the air on. We're just running fans. And the whole studio smells like whatever she was barbecuing. My tongue, I was salivating. I got to ask her tomorrow what she was cooking. Oh, the studio smells wonderful. What I should have done was walked over and said, what are you cooking? Because maybe she would have went, here, try some. Although she probably would have said, get the fuck out of my driveway. Okay. Happy Memorial Day to you too. A salute to the vets. I can't salute because I was never a vet. I don't want to, make anybody upset and angry at Grumpy. But all of you veterans, thank you for your service. We appreciate you. Your service lets us do this kind of stuff. The land of the free. Talk to you tomorrow, friends.